what is one of my favorite childhood memories? I would say being able to sit on a bench in a park, and it was actually the Boston Commons, watching people go by. And as I'm watching people just walk on by, I'm imagining who they might be in the world. So I used to do that a lot as a kid. I used to just kind of sit around and not just people watch, but then imagine that somebody, and it was always opposite of what you would think they were, right? So if somebody walked by and they were a homeless person, begging for money or just going from one place to the other, my thought process would be that they were actually a surgeon and that they were doing some experiments, trying to see if people would treat them a certain way, if they were dressed a certain way, as opposed to, when they were wearing scrubs or something. Or I would do that with business people all the time too, like a business person who was all spiffy. And like back then when I was growing up, they were called yuppies, right? So I think it meant young urban professional. And it was just a thing in the 80s and the 90s, I guess. And I would see these very successful, beautiful people in suits and their glasses and their briefcases. And I would, imagine that actually it was all a facade, right? That they were actually homeless people and that they had stolen the clothes out of Filene's or Jordan Marsh, which were the department stores back in the day where I grew up. But I loved using my imagination. Like the irony is I didn't know that that's what I was doing, right? I spent a lot of time alone as a kid. And to my great surprise, I think it was one of the best things about growing up. Now, make no mistake, I am an extrovert. I don't, sit here and try to do this thing where people are like, oh, I'm so much more introverted. And, as if being an extrovert is a bad thing. I think we're all a little bit of everything, but I am definitely an extrovert. I love people. I love being around people. I love, kind of the idea of, feeding off the energy of people. Like when you walk into a party or if you're doing a presentation or if, you have something to say and people are so interested. I love all of that. And I love interacting with people. But the reason why I feel so comfortable around people, no matter where they come from or what status they think they're in, or, if they're a celebrity or a lawyer or a janitor or a teacher or a doctor, I don't care. I get along with most people because I feel like I do so much individual, private, quiet, introverted thinking type of thing. And it's nothing that I was taught. I think when you can imagine and use your imagination to try to pretend where these people may have really come from, and you create all of these stories, I think inevitably you get really comfortable with the doctor, the lawyer, the janitor, the homeless person. You get comfortable with the queens and the kings and the presidents and the prime ministers, or because they're all a part of your world in a way, right? Because you've been seeing them as characters and not actually as real people. And so I have always done that. And I think it's part of the reason why I've always been pretty comfortable around people. I think one of the things that I fear in, this generation, I'm not trying to lump all of Gen Z or millennials, but Gen Z specifically into this situation. But because we have such great technology, right? Because we have such access to things like the internet and AI, and we all have phones and computer and access to information, there's not a lot of alone time. And I don't mean alone time where it's like you and your device, like you and watching YouTube. I think what I mean is just being quiet by yourself and creating in your head stories or just imagining what your life could be like if A, B, C, or D happened, and it be a positive thing, not something based on fear. And I think if I miss anything about my childhood is the ability to be so easily able to have that quiet time to journey into imagination world and use it as a way to move forward, right? To find positivity, to find joy. Because for me, it really was survival. I'm not going to sit here and, paint it as anything else. I had a lot of alone time because I was by myself a lot. And it was just the circumstances of how I grew up. And being able to find a way to entertain myself or to pass the time so that I didn't have to worry so much. Because I was a big worrier and I walked around a lot in fear. I was always afraid. That happens when you're a little kid and you don't really have consistency in adults supervising you or people taking care of you on a regular basis. You tend to be skittish and fearful about a lot of things. And that was a lot of my childhood, as well as I'm sure it's a lot of other people's experience as well. I'm not trying to make it any different. But I found myself alone a lot. And what that did for me was not only allow me to, kind of brainstorm about what might have been or what could have been, but it was a survival mechanism. But it also helped me find stories that would bring me joy. And I think that's a really great thing. And I fear that we may have lost a little bit of that or a lot of that because there's so much information load that is so external. It's coming from somewhere else, right? It's not coming from within. And even when it does come from within, sometimes it's a little bit more manufactured, right? It takes a little bit more digging. And look I'm saying this for myself as well. As an adult, I have to turn things off. I have to force myself to have quiet time where I'm not doing anything. And I know a lot of people will then be like, oh no, but I read all the time. Again, that's information coming from an external place. I'm saying actually having the time to just sit and be with yourself and just think and dream and imagine and create and consider a character or who you might be. Oh, I'll tell you one of the stories I used to do all the time. It's such a cheesy story, but every time I see this like on Hallmark Channel or I'm laughing because I'm like, that is so my story. But maybe it's just more what we're alike as human beings. I don't know. But I used to have this thing that I would think about wherever I was staying, that there'd be a knock on the door. And for some reason, it'd be the president of the United States. I don't know why. And like the head of, some important, like maybe the FBI. I mean, I was too young to really understand it all. So, but I would imagine that it would be someone really important, a prime minister, a president, whatever, would knock on the door and they would tell me that they found my father. And this was a consistent story of my imagination growing up. And that he was extremely and is extremely wealthy, that they have to fly me to a castle that belongs to him, and that I would get to meet him, and that my entire life would be so different, right? And then my imagination would just go into this, I was riding horses, which, can I just tell you, I've never ridden a horse in my life, nor will I, because every time I'm near a horse, I just feel such a kinship to it. I can't get on its back, you know what I mean? But but in my imagination, I have all of these horses and on all these stables, and we live on this castle, and I have maids and butlers and all of this weird stuff, and it's every time, because no offense to Hallmark, but sometimes I watch some of those, storylines, and I'm like, dude, that's what I was thinking about when I was 12. But I do think that if I miss anything most about my childhood, it is the freedom and the ability to dream in such a powerful way that it felt real, and also that there wasn't just a beginning, middle, and end, but that the ending was always a happy ending. in the story, and part of people watching was inserting some of those characters into the storyline. And I miss that. And I try to do that. I do a lot of writing in the morning. As people know, I have a journal that I keep every morning, and I handwrite. That's one of the reasons why I do still use paper and pen. There's a texture to it. There's an ability to zone into that part of my brain that I used as a kid for imagination. And that's what happens. I let out a lot of stuff. I always write in the morning, and I really do enjoy kind of that whole process because it gets me there, right? After I do my whole drudgery of whatever it is I want to complain about, I then go into that space where I'm trying to imagine something that could be more positive than whatever I'm going through that week or during the day or whatever it is. I tend to always want to find a silver lining in whatever situation I'm in, right? I mean, that's why, the people kind of are thrown by all about the joy, but it really, when I did a deep dive into kind of my childhood, not only writing the first book, Canela, but also just thinking about what I wanted to name my company, this was the constant theme in my heart as a kid and still today. I am absolutely an optimist. I'm absolutely a much more positive person than maybe I should be. I don't know, based on how I grew up as a kid. But I feel like a lot of what I did as a child was always trying to dig myself out of whatever situation I thought I was in. And the only way I could do that was by finding a morsel of hope, which I just call joy, right? If you can find yourself to a positive place, you can usually find your way and dig yourself out of whatever hole you're in some metaphorical way, at least, right? Look, I even do this a lot in present day. It's not just the imagination thing and the writing in the journal, but every once in a while I'll go buy a lottery ticket. I think maybe a lot of us do this, right? You'll go buy a lottery ticket, and then for an hour or so, or whatever it is, even if it's 5 minutes or if it's all day, you start dreaming about the possibilities. You start considering what would happen if, you hit and you won $1 million or whatever it is, all the things you would do and how your life would change. And that's kind of the same concept. I mean, I use buying a lottery ticket in the same way as I did as a kid, sitting on that bench trying to imagine stories that would be better than the one I was living, so that I could move myself out of whatever the situation I was in real life dealing with to the next step, because you could find a morsel of hope. And so and look, I'm not sitting here advocating people buy lottery tickets. That's not my point. But I'm just giving you an example. That's kind of, I think sometimes what I do is when I know I'm at my limit and music can't get me out, my friends acting as therapist isn't helping me, or I'm just sitting at home kind of in doom, gloom situation. Sometimes it takes me just going for a walk, and that walk may be to the local grocery store to get a lottery ticket so that I can just try to imagine a different life, So I do wish that it was easier to use my imagination on a regular basis. Today, I am lucky because my routine is such that in the morning I am journaling. And I think that is part of still keeping in tune with finding positivity and being creative and, dreaming through writing. It's the way I can zone out. But when you're a kid and you have time and you have no phone and you have no TV and you have no computer and you're sitting outside and you're just looking at the trees, or you're looking at people, or you're looking at, cars going by, and you can just start to imagine what the world would be like if you changed a few things, or if you, could imagine that an elephant walked by in the middle of the street, or, I would do weird things too. I would do weird things like, I would imagine something as silly, like an elephant wouldn't be on a city street, but I would do that. What would happen if out of nowhere? And then you start doing the backstory. Why did the elephant get there? And why are all the people freaking out? It's just an elephant. I will also say that I do miss my childhood. Again, from the outside looking in, I guess especially when people read the book, it wasn't my intention, but people learned stuff that made them sad for me about my childhood. But I had a fantastic childhood. And I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I had a very positive outlook on life just in general. So if I could give one piece of advice, I guess, to anyone today who might be listening is take more time to just be quiet. Not to read or listen to music, or can you sit somewhere and not think about anything in particular, whatever comes to your mind, just let it flow. But make sure it's not about work or the kids or your husband or your wife or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, just can you get to, and I think it takes a long time for people to get there, to really be able to think about nothing and then to start creating from that nothingness place. Right? I think it takes people a long time to get there because we're so consumed with so much input and information from everywhere. I think that is one of the most brilliant gifts I've been given. I think it's one of the best things about how I grew up that I cherish is not feeling guilty about being quiet. I think sometimes people will, rest and feel guilty about it. They will want to be by themselves and not do anything. And if you hear people, they'll be like, I took the weekend off and I did absolutely nothing, but you can hear in their voice, there's like a guilt to it. Like they should have been doing laundry or painting the house or fixing a car or something, right? You kind of always hear this because especially in the United States, I don't think we value downtime at all or enough. And I think it's part of maybe what makes us so uniquely beautiful as human beings is the ability to create and the ability to imagine. And we can't do that if we're constantly doing, right? I always say, if I didn't have to work 40, 50 hours a week, I could probably write the great American novel, or I could, do so many things. If I could spend more time doing nothing, I could then figure out how to move forward and do the things that I really want to do. I mean, it's kind of hard to do that when you're working all the time, doing something maybe you don't love. And people, and everyone knows I love a lot of these kind of wisdom-esque people, and I know what they mean when they say certain things. But it really is not easy to pursue your dreams when you can't make ends meet. And it really isn't all about you need to just, if that's really what you want to be and that's what you want to do, you have to drop everything and just do that. Or you have to find a way, you have to hustle. As I'm getting older and I'm realizing I still haven't accomplished some of the goals I have set for myself. Goodness knows I've accomplished a lot of other goals that other people thought I should have accomplished. But the ones that I want to set for myself, I still haven't done. And it isn't for lack of trying, it's exhaustion. And I think that's fair enough. And some people will say, well, then you don't want it bad enough or whatever. And I don't subscribe to any of that because I think saying some of the things that we say makes us feel better, but may not be actually true, right? So when people tell you things like, you should let go and let God, that sounds good. But how do you let go of something that you're upset about? How do you do that? You can't just turn a switch in your body and say, I'm now going to let go of this situation. And so that's kind of, just an aside kind of example. But if you want to be whatever it is you want to be, yes, you need to pursue it. You need to do it to the best of your ability. But if you don't get there, maybe that's not the right time. Maybe it's going to happen at a different time and in a different way. You don't have to feel bad about not hustling the way in which whoever latest life coach guru is telling you to do it, right? And I sometimes feel bad because I get so angry, like I am hustling. Like, what else you want me to do? This is about as much hustling as one person can take or do. So if I were to go back to that time when I was a kid and was on a bench in the Boston Commons, watching people walking back and forth and imagining that what they were presenting themselves to be as they walked past me was actually the opposite of what they actually were. If I would go back to that time and I could just, sit for a minute and create and be and do, I can feel really good about myself. And I think that's what happens every morning for me when I write in my journal and I just sit and I think about all the things I want to think about and I create things. This morning I started thinking about a character that I would love to put on screen in a film. And here's the thing, there's no story, but I have this amazing character that I think would be so brilliant. And I want to take that character and I want to make a story with that character. And I created that this morning. Now, in 3 days from now, when I reread that, I might be like, yeah, no, that's not going to work. But it was so fun to do, I think we need to do more of that. I think kids need to be encouraged, but I think adults do too. We need to be able to go back to that place where our minds can play. And I think that's what I would always want to embrace is the ability to not be childlike because we play differently as we get older, but to remember what it was like to play with whatever. I guess kids had Legos and they had Barbies and they had all these things and you would build these things and you would imagine whatever it was you were imagining when you were playing. And I think that's what I did when I was sitting on a bench is I would just be playing with the ideas that would come to me and I would create things and it was fantastic. And when I can do it now as an adult, I take advantage of it fully and completely. And I wish other people would do that too and that they would teach their kids, you know what, it's okay to sit and do absolutely nothing. You don't have to be doing something 24/7. You can take time and just be. As always, thank you for stopping by. All About the Joy. This is Carmen Talk. We always, always, always appreciate you taking the time. Please like, share, and subscribe. We hope you'll join us on Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on our show, the live stream Thursday nights. And yeah, you can always catch replays on YouTube, on Facebook, and on LinkedIn. And yeah, we'll see you again next time. Bye. Thanks for stopping by All About the Joy. Be better and stay beautiful, folks. Have a sweet day.